A lot of amazing artists say that if you want to get good at art, you have to draw every day. So I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to challenge myself to draw every day for 30 days to see if it really works as well as people say. And I won't be settling for just doodling. I'll be doing some proper studies and practice to see if it's really worth it. Throughout this video, I'll be sharing what I learned about improving quickly. And if you watch the whole video, you might be surprised by how this challenge ends. Let's get started. I start the very first day by doing a bunch of figure drawing. Figure drawing is something I've done plenty of times in the past. I'm not really doing anything too difficult or new, just drawing figures from reference photographs. But it's been a while since I've done this, so it was nice to do again. These were pretty fun and relaxing for me. In the past, I've mostly focused on drawing more masculine figures, so I figured it'd be a good opportunity to learn how to draw more appealing feminine figures. But more importantly, I'm focusing on one specific goal: to improve as fast as possible. On social media, we see learning artists draw every day and improving very rapidly. Makes sense. Why waste time? It's better to do things as optimally as possible, right? But anyway, the next thing I had to think about was how long I wanted to draw for every day. I don't usually time myself when I draw, but the more recent versions of Clip Studio Paint shows the amount of time you spend on a canvas. So I'll be using that to estimate how long each drawing took. This spread took about 4 hours while I was streaming my art. And if I want to improve as quickly as possible, I should probably draw as much as I can every day, right? But unfortunately, this wasn't something that I could do. As much as I would love to just do studies all day long, sometimes I had other things I needed to draw. I would do a few studies before I would reluctantly move on to working on an actual illustration. Or sometimes if I was really getting into the flow of working on an illustration, I had to interrupt that to scribble a quick figure before I could move on to what I actually wanted to draw. I'm not really the kind of artist that can focus on doing more than one thing at once, so having to do that was actually really frustrating. But unfortunately, that was only the least of my worries. On day 8, I managed to complete this illustration, but this wasn't without consequence. On the next day, I set out to start my daily drawing and discovered that my wrist was starting to hurt. And I was actually quite surprised about this because at most I was drawing for 5 or 6 hours a day, which is a lot less than professional artists. But that's the thing about drawing as an activity. It's inherently one that involves a lot of repetitive motions and it's not good for you at all. I think this is important to say, but if anything is hurting, you should stop doing the thing that is hurting immediately. By continuing, you risk permanent injury. You definitely don't want to be an idiot and risk your drawing hand forever for something stupid like a YouTube video about drawing every day. Nobody would ever do anything so ridiculous. Anyway, my hand was only starting to hurt, so I tried to devise a way of drawing that didn't seem to hurt it. I usually press really lightly when I draw, but I adjusted the pressure curve even lighter so I could make dark lines by barely touching the tablet. And fortunately, this worked. The pain in my wrist disappeared, which meant that on day 11, I was ready to take on my next challenge: clothing folds. Specifically, I had to learn how to draw that in order to make this video. And so I just got started the same way I did my figure drawings. I found some good references and copied them the best I could. And since this was the first time I had ever seriously tried to study drapery, I was learning a lot. I felt like my brain was just getting filled up with new information and I was really improving, just like I wanted. This was fantastic. Or so I thought. So the very next day, I spent an hour and 20 minutes drawing this. Same thing, next day, I drew this. And that's great. Or is it? Because somehow, unlike the first time I did it, I learned absolutely nothing from these studies. In fact, I'd say they were almost entirely wastes of time. But why? They pretty much look the same, don't they? On the surface, sure. But what really changed was my mindset. I've been trying to get back to the gym since making YouTube videos, drawing, and streaming are fairly sedentary activities. And the day I drew this was also my first day back after a pretty long while. And I was tired. I really didn't want to draw, but forced myself to do it anyway. However, my brain was so fatigued that I couldn't absorb anything. Well, if I'm not learning anything, I guess there's no more point in drawing, right? Does that mean that drawing every day is pointless? Not exactly. But let me explain. There's something I've noticed when I do studies, which is that there are 2 different types of studies for me. It's not like they look any different, but it's more about how I approach the learning process. I have 2 modes. The first mode is focus mode. I'm approaching something that is new to me, and I'm deliberately trying to remember that new information while I'm drawing. But this takes a lot of effort. It's really tiring, which is why I can't stay in this mode for too long. My brain is just too fatigued to take in any more new information. On the other hand, at the beginning of this challenge, I was in my other mode, mileage mode. When I'm in this mode, I'm not really trying to memorize or learn anything new. I'm simply drawing things that I've already studied in the past. So I just copy a reference without thinking too much about it. It's a lot less tiring, almost restful, which is why on day 14, I just spent some time relaxing and drawing some hand poses. Like figures, it's nothing new and I've done this plenty of times in the past. But hang on a second. What's the point of doing this if I'm not even learning anything new? We're trying to improve quickly here, right? This sounds like the opposite of what we want. But remember, it's not like I'm learning nothing. I'll still be subconsciously making observations here and there, but it is true that it's nowhere near as efficient. But the important thing is that this is much less tiring than focus mode, which means I can keep drawing every day as long as I have a good balance between focus and mileage modes. But here's an important question. What's the optimal balance between these modes? Hang on. Isn't there a pretty obvious answer to this? If there's one mode where you can learn fast and the other where you learn slow, then simply do the fast one all the time. Yeah, sure, there might be a bit of discomfort and tiredness, but isn't it worth it to improve as quickly as possible? Wake up because it's time to rise and grind. There's no time to rest. This makes perfect sense, but not for everyone. One thing to remember is that we are all different. We have different tolerance for stress and doing things we dislike. Someone who is particularly resilient can probably easily handle drawing for hours every day, doing extremely boring but effective art drills. As for me, well, listen, I would love to think of myself like the hero of a story that can overcome hardship to finally achieve their goals. But a few years ago, I nearly quit art because I was so desperate to get better and ended up pushing myself so hard that I nearly burnt out. And while the grind set seems really cool and glamorous, I'd rather focus on practical results based on who I really am, rather than who I wish I was. And who I am in reality is someone who has a really hard time concentrating on tasks that they don't like. Someone who needs lots of breaks. And by giving myself what I needed, I found that I was able to achieve a lot more than forcing myself to do something that I wasn't capable of. After realizing this, I spent a lot more time in mileage mode, doing more relaxing practice. But that's when I realized a hidden benefit to this mode. I think drawing is really hard. There's so much information to remember, and having to actively think about all of these things all of the time is pretty overwhelming. For example, having to actively think about the shape of the bicep, its proportions, how it changes shape as it moves, every single time you want to draw an arm is a lot of effort. But there's a way I found I could do it without thinking of all that, and that is by putting that information into my muscle memory instead. And that is the main point of mileage mode. By repeating an action over and over again, eventually I found that I was able to do it almost without thinking. And this would free up my conscious mind to learn new things and solve new problems, which I could then put into my muscle memory and keep repeating the process. At this point, it's day 25, and I'm nearly done with this challenge. I've done a whole bunch of drapery studies, and also even randomly drawn some fish, because why not? And I've even completed another illustration, which is a commission. I've done a whole lot of learning when it comes to drawing clothing folds, and now I'm learning how to shade them. If I take a look back at how far I've come in just a month, I think there's already been some improvement, and in less than 30 days too. I guess there really is a reason all the great artists keep telling us to do it. But this improvement has nothing to do with drawing every single day, and I think it has more to do with the amount that I was drawing. Getting good at art is the same as getting good at literally anything else. You have to do a lot of practice. Drawing every day helps you get that practice in more quickly and stay more consistent with it. But it doesn't necessarily have to be every single day, because in the end, we are all different. Some people might benefit from drawing every day. Others, like me, will not. We're good at different things, we grew up in different places, and most importantly, we learn best in different ways. There are different learning styles like visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and even the modes I was talking about earlier is just my own personal way of doing things. Other artists have found great success in doing things differently. The most important thing is to understand yourself and to know what works for you personally, and the only way to find out is to try. Anyway, on day 27, I finished this rendering of a hoodie. On day 28, a Silk Song came out, so I played that, and I guess I failed the challenge. Whoops! Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, then you should watch this video. Now. Bye-bye.